3 years had passed since the divorce. For the most part, he had rebuilt his life. His mornings were always busy, starting with making breakfast for his kids, packing their lunches, and making sure they were ready for school. After that, he went to work, putting in long hours, sometimes feeling exhausted, but he kept going. It wasn't always easy being a single dad, but he had learned to manage it, to balance work and family, to hold everything together even when he felt like falling apart inside. The house was quiet now. The kids were at school. The dog was sleeping in the corner of the living room, and he finally had a moment to sit down with a cup of coffee. He liked these quiet moments. They gave him time to think, to reflect, to breathe. 3 years ago, his life had looked very different. Back then, the divorce had left him feeling lost, angry, and full of regret. He had felt like he had failed, not just in his marriage, but in everything he had tried to hold on to. But over time, he had learned to let go of the anger, to focus on what he could control, and to be there for his children no matter what. He still thought about his ex-wife sometimes. Not every day, but often enough. Sometimes it was a memory of a shared laugh. Other times it was a pang of guilt for things left unsaid. Life had moved on, yet the past always seemed to linger in the corners of his mind. He tried to avoid dwelling on it too much. After all, he had to focus on the present. The kids needed him, and he wanted to be the best father he could be. That evening, like most evenings, was spent helping the children with homework, preparing dinner, and getting them ready for bed. Once they were asleep, he finally had some time to himself. He liked sitting in the living room, letting the quiet wash over him, scrolling through his phone, catching up on the news, or just staring at the ceiling, letting his mind wander. He felt a sense of calm, a small peace that he had fought hard to find after years of turbulence. It was past midnight when he finally went to bed. He set his alarm for the next morning, pulled the covers up, and closed his eyes. Sleep came quickly, as it often did when he was this tired. The world outside was quiet, and for a while he felt safe and comfortable, cocooned in his own little world. Then, at exactly 3 a.m, his phone rang. The sound was sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. He sat up instantly, his heart pounding, the peaceful calm of the night shattered. He fumbled for the phone, eyes wide open, and saw the hospital number on the screen. A cold shiver ran down his spine. "Hello?" he answered, his voice rough with sleep. On the other end, a nurse's voice came through, calm but urgent. "This is the hospital. Your ex-wife has been brought in. She's in surgery, and we need you here immediately. You're her last hope." His stomach dropped. His mind went blank for a moment. He had not expected this. 3 years of separation, of moving on, and suddenly he was pulled back into a situation he had thought he was far away from. The words echoed in his mind. You're her last hope. He had never felt so helpless, so terrified, so certain that everything depended on him. He tried to gather his thoughts, tried to focus, but his mind raced in a million directions. Why was she in surgery? What had happened? Was she going to be okay? He could hear the urgency in the nurse's voice, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had to get there. He had no choice. Despite the years apart, despite everything, he was the one she needed now. He quickly got dressed, throwing on clothes in a rush, his hands shaking. He grabbed the keys, his coat, anything he could take with him, and ran out the door. The streets were empty, silent, the world asleep while he drove with a sense of urgency he had never felt before. Every red light, every stop sign felt like an eternity, each second stretching painfully as he raced toward the hospital. As he drove, memories flooded back. He remembered their marriage, the arguments, the laughter, the quiet moments they had shared. He thought about the divorce, the fights, the pain, the feeling of being torn apart. And he thought about his children, how much they needed both parents, how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could change. By the time he arrived at the hospital, he was shaking, not just from the adrenaline, but from fear and worry. The fluorescent lights of the emergency entrance were harsh, cold, and unforgiving. He parked quickly, ran inside, and approached the reception desk. I'm here for my ex-wife, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, but it wavered with emotion. I was told I'm her last hope. The nurse looked at him with understanding. You'll need to wait here. The surgery is ongoing. We'll update you as soon as possible. He nodded, swallowing hard, feeling the weight of helplessness pressing down on him. He sank into a chair, hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Every minute was unbearable. He wanted to pace, to scream, to do something, anything, but there was nothing he could do but wait. In that waiting room, he felt a mix of emotions he had not expected to feel again. Fear, guilt, regret, hope, love, all swirling together in a storm. He thought about the past 3 years, about the choices he had made, about the distance he had kept, and about the person who had now become vulnerable and needed him more than ever. He realized that no matter what had happened between them, in this moment, nothing else mattered. All that mattered was her life, her safety, her chance to survive. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. He reminded himself that he had faced challenges before. He had learned to handle difficult situations, to care for his children, to persevere when everything seemed impossible. He reminded himself that panic would not help. Fear would not help. He needed to be strong. He needed to be ready to act, to make decisions if called upon, to support her in any way he could. Hours felt like minutes and minutes felt like hours as he sat in that chair. The world outside the hospital windows remained quiet, indifferent to the turmoil within. He checked his watch constantly, counting each second, each heartbeat. He felt like time had slowed, like the universe had paused, holding its breath along with him. He remembered the times they had shared as a family, small moments of joy and connection that seemed so ordinary then, but now felt precious. He thought about the children, wondering if they knew, if they understood, if they could feel the weight of the situation. He promised himself that he would be there for them, no matter what happened, just as he would be there for her. As the night stretched on, he found himself talking quietly to himself, as if speaking aloud could somehow make a difference. He whispered prayers, pleaded silently, asking for strength, asking for guidance, asking for a miracle. He replayed memories of her in his mind, her smile, her laugh, the way she had once looked at him with trust and love. He held onto those memories, letting them give him courage. Finally, as the first hints of dawn began to light the sky outside, he saw the surgeon approaching. His heart leaped, both with hope and fear. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment that would determine everything. He stood up, hands still trembling, bracing himself for whatever news was about to come. The weight of the past, the intensity of the present, and the uncertainty of the future pressed down on him. But he knew one thing for certain. He was ready to do whatever was needed. He was her last hope, and he would not fail. The journey from the quiet of his home to the sterile, tense hospital waiting room had been long, both in distance and in emotion. He had traveled through fear, regret, and memory to arrive here, prepared to face whatever challenge awaited him. In that moment, he realized that life was fragile, that second chances could appear in the most unexpected ways, and that sometimes the past comes rushing back to remind us what truly matters. He took another deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and waited, fully aware that the next few minutes could change everything. He sat in the hospital waiting room, the cold plastic chair pressing against him, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, the distant beeping of machines from the operating rooms. The minutes dragged like hours. Every sound made his heart race. Every shadow made him jump. He felt helpless, knowing she was in there, fighting for her life, and all he could do was wait. He had always thought of himself as someone who could handle emergencies, who could take care of his children and keep things steady, but this was different. This was her life, his ex-wife's life. And somehow, after all these years apart, it was his responsibility. His mind kept going back to the phone call. The nurse's words replayed over and over. "You're her last hope." He didn't know what that meant exactly. Did they need him to make a decision? Did she need a blood transfusion from him? Or was it something else? Something he couldn't even imagine? He tried calling his friends for advice, but no one answered at this hour. He felt alone, carrying the weight of something he had never anticipated. He closed his eyes for a moment and let his mind wander to memories he had tried to bury. He remembered the early days of their marriage, how they had dreamed of a life together, how they had laughed late into the night, and how he had thought nothing could ever break them. Then came the arguments, the fights that escalated over small things, the misunderstandings that festered, and the slow drift apart that had ended in divorce. For 3 years he had tried to move on, to focus on his children and his work, to make peace with the past. But now, with the emergency call, the past felt like it had rushed back all at once. The waiting room was nearly empty, except for a few other families and patients, each wrapped in their own worries. He tried to keep himself occupied, checking his phone again and again, pacing the small space, running his hands through his hair. He thought about what the nurses had said and tried to prepare himself for anything. Could she survive? Would the surgery go well? What if she didn't make it? Fear gnawed at his stomach, making him feel dizzy and weak. At one point, a nurse walked past and gave him a small nod. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes told him that she understood the gravity of the situation. That tiny gesture gave him a small bit of strength. He sat back down, trying to breathe deeply, trying to calm himself. He whispered silently to himself, asking for a miracle, asking for strength, asking for the courage to face whatever came next. As the hours passed, he thought about his children. He wondered if they knew what was happening, if they could feel the tension in the house even from their rooms. He wished he could tell them that everything would be okay, but he didn't even know if he could believe that himself. All he could do was sit and wait, hoping that she would make it through. He promised himself that if she did, he would be there, supporting her no matter what. He would not let the past come between them now. Memories of her as a mother came to him too. How she had comforted their children when they were sick. How she had been patient, kind, and loving even when things were difficult. He remembered small moments. Reading bedtime stories, making pancakes on Sunday mornings, cheering them on at school events. Those memories made his heart ache. He realized that, even after all the pain of their separation, she had been a part of his life in ways that could never be erased. He thought about the last time they had spoken. It had been polite, brief, a necessary conversation about the kids, but cold, distant. He regretted the words he hadn't said, the apologies he hadn't made. He wished he could go back, make amends, show her that he cared, that he had always cared. Now, in the hospital waiting room, those regrets felt sharper, more urgent. He understood that life was fragile and fleeting, and that there were no guarantees. Every so often, a doctor or nurse would come out to give an update. Each time he held his breath, listening intently, clinging to every word. Sometimes the updates were reassuring, sometimes not. Each time, he felt a mix of hope and fear, a roller coaster of emotions that left him drained but unable to leave. He couldn't step away. He couldn't escape. This was his moment, whether he wanted it or not. He tried to distract himself by thinking about practical things. Who would pick up the kids if something happened? How could he explain this to them? How would their lives change if she didn't make it? These thoughts were painful but necessary. He needed to prepare for every possibility, even if he hoped that he wouldn't have to face them. He realized that being her last hope meant more than just being physically present. It meant being mentally and emotionally ready to step up in any way required. The waiting was grueling, the silence punctuated by distant beeps and footsteps. He felt every minute pass like an hour, every hour like a day. Yet, in the midst of this fear, he discovered a strange clarity. He understood what truly mattered. The petty grievances, the arguments, the distance, all of it faded away in the face of something so much bigger than himself. Life had a way of putting things in perspective, and he was seeing it now in the most intense way possible. He remembered times from his childhood, when his own parents had faced challenges and he had felt helpless. He thought about the lessons he had learned then and how they applied now. Strength wasn't about controlling everything. It was about showing up, about being present, about caring deeply even when it scared you. That realization gave him a small sense of purpose. He could not change the past, but he could act now. He could be there for her in the only way that mattered. As dawn approached, the hospital began to stir. Nurses moved with quiet efficiency, Patients were brought in, families arrived, and the world outside the waiting room seemed to wake from its slumber. Yet inside, he was still caught in the same place, suspended between fear and hope, past and future. He thought about what he might say to her if she woke up, how he could bridge the gap that time and distance had created. He vowed to speak from the heart, to let go of anger, to offer support and care without reservation. He realized that this experience was changing him, shaping him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The fear, the uncertainty, the vulnerability, they were uncomfortable, but they were also human. They reminded him of his capacity to feel deeply, to love, to protect, and to hope. In the sterile, quiet hospital waiting room, he felt more alive than he had in years, more aware of the preciousness of life and the importance of being present. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the surgeon appeared in the doorway. The man's face was calm but serious, his eyes meeting his with a weight that made his heart skip a beat. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment that would tell him whether all the fear, all the waiting, all the sleepless hours had been worth it. He took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and prepared to hear the news that would change everything. In that instant, he understood that life had brought him back to her side for a reason, and he was ready to face whatever came next with courage, hope, and unwavering commitment. As he waited for the surgeon, memories came flooding back with a force that took his breath away. He remembered the quiet mornings they had shared before the divorce, the way sunlight had streamed into the kitchen while they drank coffee together. Those mornings seemed so far away now, like another lifetime, yet the emotions were fresh in his heart. He thought about the arguments, the misunderstandings, the silence that had grown between them, and he felt a pang of regret. All those years of pride and stubbornness, all the things left unsaid, suddenly seemed meaningless compared to the life that now hung in the balance. He realized that the waiting room, the sterile lights, the distant sounds of hospital machines were not just a place of fear. They were a place of reflection. He thought about the moments when he had been too busy, too distracted, too focused on proving himself, and how those moments had cost him the closeness they had once shared. He wished he could go back, do things differently, tell her the things he had kept inside. But now time was irrelevant. All that mattered was that she needed him. He remembered their children and how much they had grown in the past 3 years. They had adapted to life without her as much as possible, but they had always noticed her absence. He had tried to be both father and mother in their lives, but he knew that no matter how much love and care he provided, a part of them still longed for her. That thought made his chest tighten. He wanted to protect them from pain, but life had a way of teaching lessons harshly, without warning. He thought about the conversations they had avoided over the years, the questions left unanswered, and the apologies that had never been offered. He felt a deep longing to bridge that gap, to mend what could still be mended. He understood that this moment, her lying in surgery needing him, was both a test and a chance. A chance to show love, to let go of anger, to be present in a way that mattered more than words ever could. As he sat, lost in thought, he noticed the other families around him. Some were silent, others whispered softly, each carrying their own burdens. He realized that life was full of these moments, full of people facing challenges, full of fear, hope, and love intertwined. He felt connected to them, in a strange way, sharing the same human experience, waiting, hoping, and praying for those they cared about. The minutes stretched endlessly, and he found himself pacing the floor, stopping only to glance at the doors of the operating room. He ran his hands through his hair, his mind racing. What if she didn't make it? What would he say to the children? How could he face them if the worst happened? He had spent years learning to handle life's difficulties. But this was something beyond control. This was raw, unfiltered fear mixed with love, responsibility, and hope. In the quiet of the night, he reflected on the past 3 years. He had built a life for himself and his children, but the thought of losing her made all that preparation feel fragile. He realized that life was unpredictable, that second chances were rare, and that sometimes the past returned to remind you what truly mattered. He understood that he could not change the past, but he could be there now. He could step up and face this moment fully, without reservation, without fear holding him back. He thought about their relationship, about the bond that had been strained but never completely broken. He remembered the laughter, the arguments, the shared responsibilities, and the moments of understanding that had occurred despite everything. Those memories gave him strength, reminding him that love did not always disappear, even when life's circumstances made it difficult to nurture. Hours passed, and the waiting room began to fill with the first signs of morning. The nurses moved efficiently, the hospital slowly coming alive with activity. Yet he remained in his chair, a silent sentinel, consumed by worry and reflection. Every sound, every movement caught his attention, but he could not tear himself away. This was not a time for distraction. This was a time for presence, for readiness, for emotional strength. He remembered times from his own childhood when his parents had faced crises. He recalled the fear he had felt, the helplessness, and the relief that followed when things turned out okay. Those memories reminded him that fear was a part of life, but so was resilience. He understood now that his own courage would be tested, that he would have to rise to the occasion not just for her, but for their children and for himself. He closed his eyes briefly, taking deep breaths to calm his racing mind. He tried to envision a positive outcome, imagining her waking up after surgery, healthy and strong. He pictured the relief on her face, the gratitude in her eyes, the shared understanding that some bonds could never be broken. That vision gave him a small sense of hope, a light in the darkness of uncertainty. At the same time, he could not ignore the fear that lingered. What if something went wrong? What if the surgery was complicated, and the doctors needed him to make a decision? The weight of that possibility pressed down on him, making him feel both anxious and determined. He realized that being her last hope meant more than just showing up. It meant being mentally and emotionally prepared to face whatever might come, to act decisively, to provide support and care in every way possible. He thought about forgiveness, about letting go of past grievances, about embracing the moment fully. He understood that holding on to anger or resentment would only weaken him now. He needed to be fully present, fully engaged, fully compassionate. He whispered silently to himself, promising that he would do everything in his power to help, to support, to protect. As he waited, he remembered small details from their shared life. The way she smiled when she was happy, the sound of her laughter echoing through the house, the quiet moments of understanding and connection that had seemed so ordinary at the time. Those memories were now precious, grounding him in the reality of what was important. He understood that life could be harsh, but it was also filled with beauty, love, and opportunities for redemption. He thought about the future, about the children, about the life that could be rebuilt if she survived. He imagined them all together, supporting each other, learning from the past but not being defined by it. That vision gave him a sense of purpose, a reason to endure the fear and uncertainty of the waiting room. He realized that his role in this moment was not just about her survival, but about setting an example of love, resilience, and hope for their children. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the surgeon returned. His expression was calm, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that made the father's heart race. This was the moment that would determine everything. He rose from his chair, hands trembling, breath quickening, prepared to hear news that would shape the rest of his life. He understood that whatever the outcome, he had done everything he could to be present, to care, to hope. As he listened to the surgeon's words, he felt a mixture of relief, gratitude, and renewed determination. He understood that life was fragile, unpredictable, and often unforgiving, but it was also filled with moments of grace, love, and connection that could not be measured. He realized that this experience, as terrifying and uncertain as it had been, had taught him something invaluable. The power of presence, the importance of love, and the strength that comes from rising to meet life's challenges head-on. In that quiet hospital room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the faint sounds of activity outside, he made a silent vow to himself. He would be there for her, fully and completely, without hesitation. He would support her through recovery, help rebuild what had been broken, and ensure that their children felt the stability, love, and care they deserved. The past 3 years of separation had prepared him for this moment, but they had also shown him that some connections, some responsibilities, and some bonds were eternal. He would not let this opportunity slip away. He would be the presence, the support, the hope she needed now more than ever. The hours in the waiting room stretched on like a long, endless river. Every tick of the clock seemed magnified, each second heavier than the one before. He sat, sometimes standing, sometimes pacing, trying to fight off the panic that threatened to consume him. He could hear the faint sounds of surgery from behind the closed doors, the occasional clatter of instruments, the murmured voices of doctors and nurses. Each sound made his heart race, made him feel both closer to her and more helpless at the same time. He remembered when they had first married, how they had promised to be there for each other, no matter what. At the time, it had seemed simple, almost easy. Life had a way of teaching lessons in ways you didn't expect. Divorce had broken their routine, separated their lives, and left scars that never fully healed. But in this moment, as he sat waiting for news, he realized that those promises, though strained and tested, still mattered. Even after all the years apart, he could still honor them in the only way that mattered, being present, being strong, being ready to act. His mind drifted to memories of the children, their laughter, their questions, their dependence on him. He realized that his role was bigger than just waiting. It was about being the anchor for the family, the steady presence when uncertainty threatened to overwhelm. He thought of how they would feel if she didn't make it, how he would explain the situation, how he would comfort them, how he would help them understand that life sometimes threw challenges we could not predict. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on him, but it also gave him purpose. He tried to stay calm, focusing on breathing, counting silently, whispering words of encouragement to himself. He thought about what the doctors had told him, the little updates that came in between moments of silence. Each word carried immense weight, shaping his hope and his fear simultaneously. He felt the roller coaster of emotions, the highs of a positive sign, the lows of uncertainty, and yet he remained there, unwilling to leave, unwilling to step away from the responsibility that life had thrust upon him. At one point, he closed his eyes and pictured her in the operating room, imagining her as she had been before everything had gone wrong. He remembered her strength, her resilience, her laughter, the way she had been a loving mother and partner. Those images gave him courage, a mental strength that he clung to desperately. He reminded himself that even in the darkest moments, hope could survive, and love could endure. He reflected on the past 3 years, the ways he had grown, the challenges he had faced alone, the lessons he had learned. He realized that life had prepared him for this in small, unexpected ways. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had been a step toward the ability to handle this moment. It was not just a test of his strength, but a testament to the resilience that had been quietly building within him. The waiting room was quiet except for a few families, each wrapped in their own concern. He watched them, noticing the shared human experience of fear and hope. Everyone there had someone they loved, someone they cared for deeply, and the tension of waiting for news connected them in silent, unspoken ways. He realized that he was not alone, that even in this sterile, tense environment, humanity and empathy thrived. He thought about forgiveness, about letting go of past hurts, about embracing this moment fully. Anger, resentment, and pride had no place here. Only presence, care, and courage mattered. He whispered silently, promising himself that he would do whatever it took to help, to support, and to be there without hesitation. He understood that some moments demanded everything, and this was one of those moments. As the hours passed, his mind wandered through a landscape of memories. Birthdays celebrated, arguments resolved, quiet nights together, laughter shared. Each memory reminded him of the depth of human connection, the fragility of life, and the importance of being present. He thought about the children, about the love they had for both parents, about how they would need reassurance, stability, and comfort no matter the outcome. His role was clear. He must be strong, compassionate, and unwavering. He felt exhaustion creeping in, but he refused to let it take over. Sleep could wait. Fear could not control him. Every heartbeat reminded him of the urgency, the stakes, the responsibility. He felt every second as if it were a lifetime, and yet he remained seated, waiting, hoping, preparing himself mentally and emotionally for whatever news would come. At one point, he stepped to the window, looking out at the city slowly waking. The early morning light softened the harsh edges of the buildings, the quiet streets a stark contrast to the storm of emotion inside him. He realized that life moved on outside, indifferent to human suffering and hope, yet inside this hospital life was being fought for, one heartbeat at a time. He took a deep breath, letting the morning air fill his lungs, trying to center himself, trying to hold on to calm amid the storm of worry. He thought about the possibility of being called into the operating room, of making decisions he had never imagined he would face. The idea was terrifying, yet he understood that courage was not the absence of fear but the ability to act despite it. He reminded himself that he could rise to the occasion, that he could be the presence, the hope, the support that was needed now more than ever. He silently promised himself to stay composed, to be ready, to be fully present. Time blurred as he remained in the waiting room. Every step of the day seemed uncertain, every sound amplified. He noticed small details. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant conversations of nurses, the occasional beep of a monitor. These details grounded him, kept him tethered to reality even as his mind drifted through memories, fears, and hopes. He clung to them, letting them remind him that life, with all its unpredictability, continued to move forward, and that he must move forward with it. He reflected on love, on family, on responsibility, and on the fragility of human life. He realized that the past 3 years of separation, of distance, had brought him to this precise moment, preparing him for a role he could never have anticipated. It was a test of character, of resilience, of human connection. And he understood that he could rise to it, that he could be the steady hand, the supportive presence, the hope in the darkness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the surgeon appeared once again. His face was serious but calm, eyes meeting his with a weight that made the father's heart pound. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of fear, hope, and reflection. He stood, hands trembling slightly, breath quickening, ready to receive the news that would change everything. He knew that whatever came next, he had prepared himself as best he could, and that his presence, his courage, and his love would carry him through. When the surgeon finally approached him, his heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The man's face was calm but serious, his eyes carrying the weight of the hours spent in the operating room. He had never felt such a mix of hope and fear. Every nerve in his body was tense, waiting for the words that would determine everything. The surgeon spoke slowly, carefully, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. "She made it through," the surgeon said. "It was touch and go, but she's stable now. She's going to need time and care, but she's going to be okay." Relief washed over him like a wave. His knees weakened, and he had to sit down, gripping the arms of the chair. Tears filled his eyes, unbidden, but they were tears of gratitude and hope rather than despair. After 3 years of distance, 3 years of uncertainty, the bond that had always existed between them, however strained, had been strengthened in a single terrifying night. He realized that love could endure even the harshest tests, that presence and care could make a difference, and that life could give second chances when least expected. He was led to her room, walking slowly, trying to steady himself. The smell of antiseptic, the quiet hum of machines, the soft glow of the lamp over her bed, all of it felt surreal. She was lying there, pale and still but alive. The rise and fall of her chest with each breath was enough to make his heart swell with emotion. He sat by her side, taking her hand gently, as if grounding himself in the reality of her survival. In that moment, all the past disagreements, all the distance, all the unspoken words, seemed to fade away. They didn't matter now. What mattered was here and now, the fragility of life, the connection between them, and the role he had to play. He whispered softly, telling her it was going to be okay, that he was there, that she was not alone. He realized that sometimes, Words were not enough, but presence could speak volumes. The hours that followed were filled with quiet care. He called the children, letting them know she was stable, guiding them gently through their worry. He helped arrange meals, comforted them, reassured them that their mother would recover. Even through exhaustion and lingering fear, he found strength in the act of caring, in being present, in being needed. This was a role he had always taken seriously as a father, but now it extended beyond that, touching the woman who had shared so much of his life. He thought about the lessons this night had taught him. Life was unpredictable, fragile, and precious. Time spent in anger or pride was wasted. Moments of connection, understanding, and love were what truly mattered. He reflected on the past 3 years, realizing that even in separation, the ties of family and humanity could not be broken completely. The night had reminded him of responsibility, resilience, and the importance of showing up when it mattered most. Over the next few days, he stayed close, helping with her recovery, managing the children, and making sure the household could continue functioning. He realized that this was not just about a single night, but about rebuilding, reconnecting, and finding a new balance. He offered support without judgment, care without expectation, and presence without hesitation. Slowly, he saw her regain strength, her eyes opening, her voice returning, her laughter beginning to echo once more through the house. As she recovered, they talked quietly about the past, about what had been lost, and what could still be healed. They shared apologies, understanding, and recognition of mistakes, but they also celebrated resilience, love, and the ability to endure. They were no longer just two individuals connected by past pain, but two people united by experience, care, and mutual respect. The night had shown them that life was too short to hold on to grudges, and that sometimes, crises could heal wounds that time alone could not. He spent time with the children, helping them adjust, answering their questions honestly, and showing them the importance of empathy, responsibility, and love. He realized that through his actions, he could teach them resilience, courage, and the significance of family ties. The experience had transformed not just him, but the entire family unit, reminding them all of what truly mattered in life. Weeks passed, and her strength returned steadily. The house, once quiet and structured around the rhythm of his own routine, began to fill with warmth, laughter, and life again. The children's joy at seeing her healthy and active reminded him of the power of love and presence. He realized that the challenges of the past were not erased, but they had been reframed, given new meaning, and a chance for growth. He reflected often on that night, on the phone call, on the hours spent pacing the waiting room, on the fear and hope that had intertwined so tightly. He understood that those moments of crisis revealed character, tested resilience, and highlighted what truly mattered. Life had given him an opportunity to step up, to be the presence she needed, to be a guide and support for his children, and to demonstrate the enduring strength of human connection. In quiet moments, he would sit by her side, watching her sleep, thinking about how close life had come to changing forever. He held her hand gently, feeling the pulse of life beneath his fingers, a tangible reminder that love, care, and presence could truly matter. He realized that this night had not only saved her life, but had saved a piece of him too, the part of him capable of deep empathy, unwavering care, and profound human connection. Through the weeks of recovery, their conversations deepened, filled with honesty, understanding, and reflection. They acknowledged mistakes, accepted responsibility, and shared a renewed sense of purpose in their relationship. The divorce had not been erased, but it had been softened by experience, by care, and by the realization that human connection was stronger than distance or past grievances. They found themselves working together, supporting each other, rebuilding trust and understanding, all in the quiet, steady rhythm of recovery. The children thrived in this new balance, seeing their parents cooperate, care, and support each other in ways they had not before. Laughter returned to the house, small moments of joy and playfulness bridging the gaps of time lost. The father felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not in controlling the events that had unfolded, but in being present, being supportive, and showing the enduring power of love and responsibility. He realized that life's fragility was a reminder to cherish every moment, to embrace opportunities for connection, to let go of anger, and to prioritize what truly mattered. The night of the emergency call, the hours in the waiting room, and the emotional roller coaster of fear and hope had transformed him. He had faced uncertainty, embraced responsibility, and emerged with a deeper understanding of love, family, and resilience. In the end, life returned to a new rhythm, one shaped by experience, gratitude, and the bonds of family. He watched the children play, helped his ex-wife regain her independence, and found peace in the knowledge that he had stepped up when it mattered most. The night of fear and uncertainty had become a turning point, a reminder that even after distance and hardship, connections could be renewed, love could endure, and life could be lived fully with presence, care, and courage. He understood now that being her last hope was not just about the night of surgery. It was about the ongoing commitment to care, to support, and to rebuild. The experience had strengthened him, deepened his empathy, and shown him the importance of stepping forward in moments of crisis. It was a lesson he would carry with him forever, a reminder of the enduring power of love, responsibility, and human connection.